Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's training seminar. Today, we're going to focus on Windows and Navigation. This is the 7th session out of a 14-part series, so we are after today. We're halfway through. Again, my name is Travis Cox. I'm the Director of Training and Support Services here for Inductive Automation, and I'll be taking you through the seminar. So again, this is session 7. We're going to focus on Windows and Navigation, and that is part of the Vision module. If you attended the last 2 sessions, we focused on the SQL Bridge module and looked at the transaction groups and also SQL tags history. So with the Vision module, we're going to look at how we can create some windows and how we can configure those windows for some navigation, to have a real good navigation strategy for your project. So again, if you guys have any questions along the way, please feel free to enter those questions in on the GoToWebinar console on the right-hand side of your screen. And we'll get to those questions at the end. We'll leave about 5 to 10 minutes for questions. So today we're going to show you how to create windows, all different configuration points of Windows, and how to have pop-up windows, how to swap windows, how to close windows, how to go back and forward. And we also are going to learn how to do indirection with Windows, be able to pass parameters to Windows and do indirection, to have one pop-up window for your tank or your compressor. If you have 20 of them, you just have one pop-up window instead of having 20. So we're going to look at all of that here. And again, this is part of the Vision module. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to focus today in the actual Ignition Designer. So I'm going to minimize the PowerPoint here and go to the Ignition Designer. I have a project created called Training, and there is nothing inside of it. I just have a few SQL tags, but I don't have any windows. I don't have any transaction groups. So we're basically starting from a blank slate. So if you remember from last week, we focused in the transaction group section. Now this is the SQL Bridge module, everything that the SQL Bridge module gives you. The Vision module gives you the ability to create windows, and these are the type of windows that you can launch in a client so that you can see what you have configured. It's the visualization part of Ignition. So inside of the Windows section, we have over to the right-hand side of the Designer, we have this big design space. And that's a big gray area that we have right now. So when we create windows, those windows are going to show up in that design space. Right above that design space is the component palette. And those are the type of components you can bring into a window. So first and foremost, let's talk about a window. If I right-click on this Windows section, I have the ability to create a window. So once I create the window, there you can see it in my project browser in the tree view here. And I can also see that window in the big design part over here on the right-hand side of the Designer. So here's my window 1. Now every window inside of the Vision module will contain a root container. So you can see here I have window. Inside of that is the root container. And that root container is where all of my components and various things I'm going to add to the window are going to be in. So the root container you cannot delete. It's part of every window. And again, it will contain all of the visual elements that you put inside of it in the form of components. So in the Vision module, we can create one or more windows. And we can give each window a unique name. And in fact, we recommend that you give them unique names so that it means something to you. So if this is an administration window, you call it administration. If it is a pop-up window for your compressor, you can call it, pop-up compressor, for example. So I'm going to right-click and rename this window for here to be my overview. So once you rename it, you'll see it up here in the top left. There's my overview. And now, of course, I have nothing inside of it except for the root container. Now, once I select that window here, all the properties of the window show up down here in the bottom left under my property editor. So this overview window here has properties like dock position, start maximize, title, border display policy, title bar display policy, and much more. Right now I'm filtering on the basic set of properties. So you can see right here in my filter properties it's showing the B. But I can go ahead and expand this to show all the properties of the window, and here you can see all the properties. So let's talk about a few of these properties and see kind of what they do on Windows. Ignition is not just a one window system. You can have multiple windows and they can interact with each other, and that's what's really nice about it, so that you don't have to duplicate efforts onto Windows. So instead of, if you have a navigation, have a bunch of buttons that swap a window from one to another, you want to put that in its own window that's separate from all of your swap windows, so that you don't have to duplicate those buttons on every single window. So the way you configure these navigation windows separate from an overview window is based on the properties you have selected down here in the bottom left. And the first one is most important. It's called the dock position. And the dock position determines if that, basically the position the window is going to be docked to, or if it's going to be floating. So if you look in the design space over here, let's kind of draw a picture. I'm going to take a highlighter. We have the ability, if you go back and look at all of the drop-downs, we have floating, docked west, south, east, and north. I'm going to take a highlighter here. And if I was to dock a window to the north, that means the window would stay up here at the top. That would be my north window. If I dock a window to the south, it's going to show up down at the bottom. That's going to be my south window. If I dock a window to the west, it's going to show up over here. And again, if I dock a window to the east, it's going to show up over on the right-hand side here. Now these are the dock windows. Once you dock a window, they're going to stay at their respective place, at the top, to the left, to the right, or to the bottom. And that means that the space in the middle here is for all of your floating windows. So these are going to be for my floating windows. So that's the difference between those different dock positions that you can select. So let's go ahead and show you how this actually works. I'm going to erase the drawings, and we'll go back to our design space. And I'll keep my overview window here set to floating. I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. So I'm going to make the size just by kind of dragging it from the handle, the top left or bottom right. I can resize the window. Let's create a couple more windows now. I'm going to right-click, create a new window. We'll call this one, I'll rename it to my north window. So then I'll change the dock position of this window set to north. And that means that window is going to stay at the top all the time. And it'll stay at basically once you dock it to the north, that means the width will fill in the width of the client, but the height will remain the same. So let's bring this window up here. So now I have a window to the north, and here's my floating window. You can see that my floating window cannot go on top of the docked north window. So it's just going to stay at the top no matter what. So again, if I create another window here, we'll rename this one and call it my south window, and I'll dock this one to the south. And it's going to stay at that specific height. My south window here. Oops, I docked it to the north on accident. Let's go to the south. So there it's now down at the south. And let's kind of bring our other window up a little bit so you can see this happen. Now, right now, you can see that I have a scroll bar over to the right-hand side. And sometimes people don't want that when they're designing inside of Ignition. They want the scroll bar to go away. So the scroll bar is determined by the minimum size of the client. So right now, the minimum size is set to probably 800 by 600. And that is, if I go up here to Project Properties, the minimum size of the project here, we go look under the user interface, under the client is user interface, there's a minimum size. 800 by 600 is what it's set to by default. Let's change to basically 300 by 300. So we'll make the minimum size much smaller since my resolution is not very big in this webinar. But as soon as I do that, now you can see that my scroll bars went away because my minimum size is set to this little gray line that's right there. You can even see the minimum size part put there. So that way, that's the minimum size. That means we can't, when we resize the client, it can't go any smaller than 300 by 300. But it can get bigger if you want. That would be like the smallest resolution that your client can be in. So now I have my dock south window, and I have my dock north window, and my floating window, again, is just in the middle space. It can't go to the top of each of those windows. Okay, let's create two more. We'll create this next one here. We'll rename it to west window, and I'll dock that one west. Again, it's going to stay at the left-hand side, but the height will be the height of the client, and the width will just be a static width that we define. So I'll bring my other window, my middle window, back in the design space, and there we can see what we have so far. Again, that window cannot go on top of any of those docked windows. We'll create one more here. This will be the last window that I'll create. I'll rename this one to East Window. And I'll dock this one to the east, and we'll make it much smaller here. So there we go. So again, the height is always going to be the height of the client, and the width will just be what we set here in the designer. So there are my 5 windows showing each of the dock positions: north, south, east, and west. Whenever you dock anything north, south, east, or west, that means their floating windows cannot go in above those windows in your client. Now the floating window here that I have can be in 2 modes. This middle window can be in 2 modes. One is it can be maximized, and one is it can just be floating, just like this, where we can move it around. If the window is set to maximize, that is what we call a main window. So a main window that is set to start maximized, which fills in the rest of the design space, is going to be a main window. And those are the windows you want to swap from. You want to swap from your overview to your graph screen. Well, those would be 2 main windows. And on top of your main windows, you would have pop-ups. So I can create another window here. We'll make it much smaller. And here, this could be a pop-up that we have. That will be on top of my main window. So that's the idea behind the dock position there. Right below the dock position on the properties, we have the ability to make a window, to allow a window to be closable or not. So if the box is checked, you'll get the little closable icon to the top right of the window. If it is unchecked, that X will go away from the top right. That means you cannot close the window without putting your own button or some control inside the window to close it. Below that is our maximizable. Whether or not you want the window to be maximizable. So like this pop-up window here, we may want the size of this window just to stay at some width and height. And we don't want them to be able to press this button here to maximize it. Because if you maximize it, it maximizes, we can unmaximize it, but this checkbox here allows you to turn that ability off. The next one is resizable. It's whether or not you can actually, in the client, resize the window. So you can see here that I can resize this pop-up window. This would be what a user could do. But if you don't want the user to resize it, you can uncheck that, in which case the window is not allowed to, right now, be closable or maximizable, can't be resizable, and so on. Now for any main windows that are set to maximize up here, that you want to be fill in the whole space of the design space there, you can click the box for Start Maximize. You can set that to True, in which case when the window opens in the client, it'll get set to Start Maximize. So that's kind of what those top 5 properties do for you. So typically the way people set up their projects, I'm going to go ahead and close all of my windows. And typically what people do is they have a north window or a west window that's going to be their navigation. And below that they'll have a overview window that's going to be your main window, or some window that's going to swap from. And you'll see this in our demo projects where the top is the navigation, and below that we just swap out 2 different windows that we have. So to have this, we need to have a window that's north, that's dock north. We have a main window here that is set to basically be maximizable and set to start maximized. Now there's a difference here in the designer versus the client with the start maximized checkbox. If I have this checked, right now I can keep the window in the designer unmaximized, and it's really useful for just designing the window at a certain aspect ratio. And then in the client, when that window opens up in the client, it'll automatically will look maximized like this. So that's why there's a different checkbox for Start Maximized. And also sometimes you can get rid of the ability to have this maximize button right here, and you may not see that button, so you need to have the ability to make that window start maximizing the client. So here's would be my 2 windows. Now my dock north, let's go ahead and set the background color of the root container on that window to green. And on the overview window, let's set the background color here to blue. So those are our two colors. Again, my bottom window is set to start maximize. We're allowed to close it. We're allowed to maximize it. The top window, I'm going to say you cannot close it. It's not resizable. So it just stays at the top at that specific height, and the width will be the width of the client. Now, in order to get these two windows to show up automatically when you launch a client, you need to have those set to open on startup. If you look up here in the top left in the project browser, my overview window has little icons to the right. The icon's like a little window with the play button. That is set. That means that the window will open on startup. I can do this for any window that's here. I can also select my north window to open on startup. It's just a checkbox when you right-click on the window. So now that they're both set to open on startup, I'm going to go ahead and save my project. If we go up here to Tools, go Launch Our Project, in a Windows mode, we can see what we have configured so far. So go ahead and log in, admin and password. And there is my two windows that I've configured. My Dock North window and my overview window down here that is set to start maximized. So that's why it's filling the whole space up there, whereas inside of my client, it's not set to that. Just so the designer, I can actually have it not be maximized, just for designing aspect ratios. So there we go. But now you can see that I have the title bar and the borders around these windows. And sometimes people don't want that. Sometimes they may want the Dock North window here to just look like more like a web page, where the two windows can look like they seamlessly go together. So for that, we have a couple options on a window. If you look and you select the window down here in the Properties, in the Appearance section, we have a border display policy and a title bar display policy. Now, when you are showing the title bar, up here you see that my title bar has window and has the X button and the maximizable. Of course, we can set the actual title. We can call it Overview, and that would be what we see right up here, the title of the window, which is separate from the name of the window you see in the project browser. But again, we have the ability to change these policies. So the border that's around it and the title bar, we can say always show it, never show it, in which case it will go away, or show it when it's not maximized. And so the when not maximized is a very good feature. Because again, in the designer, you may want the window to not be maximized, so you can design it at some aspect ratio. In that case, you'd want the title bar and the border around the window. But in the client, you don't want the borders and the title bars. So you can just set it to when not maximized, which means when that window gets maximized, it'll lose the borders and the title bars. But on my Dock North window up here, basically I'm going to call that my navigation window. I can basically set the border display policy to never and the title bar display policy to never, and you'll see they go away up there at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and save my project. Let's go back to the client. There's a new update available. Click here to update. And there you can see that my two windows look like they seamlessly run together. And that's because my window down below is maximized, and the borders and the title bars basically go away when it's maximized. So that's a very good way to seamlessly have two windows that look like they run together, but they are in fact two different windows. And so with this, in our top window, we can put anything we want inside of it. We can put, for example, there's a system tag under the SQL tags that shows who's logged in. I can bring that into the window up the top. So I can just drag it in as a label. We can see who's logged in right there. Put that in the top right. Of course, I can bring an image inside of a window. I can make that image be some logo. If we had a logo, I can drag a logo into here, or I can use some icons that I may already have. So here we can have maybe a little icon for a monitoring system. We'll make it a little bit smaller. And we can then, of course, have like a label right to the right of that icon, which shows, maybe we'll call the system monitoring system. Make that font a little bit bigger, 18, and there I have a little indication of what the system is all about. Then right below that, I can add we have a component under the the buttons called a tab strip. The tab strip component is very useful for swapping one window out to another. So it's a good way of having tabs for different types of windows where you can go back and forth between them. So there is my tab strip. There's tab 1, 2, and 3. My tab 1, I want when you click on that to open up the overview window. My tab 2, I want to open up a graph window. Tab 3, I want to open up something else. So my overview window here is basically all set up and ready to go as a window that is swappable. So I can right-click on the window and say Duplicate Window, in which case you see another one come in right here, and I can open this one up. I can rename this one to Graph Window, to Graph. Come over here, we'll give the title of the window, we'll call that Graph, and I'll change the root container to be maybe like a yellow on this one. Do the same thing with the graph window. I'll duplicate the window since it's all ready to go, and I'll open it up, rename it to Administration or Admin. So there I have my admin window, and that window I'll call it the title here Admin, and I'll change the background color inside of that one to maybe a orange. Now I want my tabs up here at the top to swap between those 3 windows, because I only want one of those windows open at a time. This is a very good strategy so that you can only have one window that you're looking at open at a time, so they're not kind of hiding behind the other windows. So that way, if you have maybe queries running on all the windows, if you're only looking at one, only the queries on that window are going to run, versus the other ones won't even be there. But if you had all 3 of them open, then they're all going to run at the same time. So you want to kind of think of that as far as what that project is doing. So my tab strip, I can right-click on my tab strip, go to the customizer of it, and I can say, hey, the first one is the overview tab. And so basically the display name is overview, and the tab name is the name of the window you want to open. So that's because the navigation mode of the tab strip is set to swap windows automatically for us. So it's kind of nice. Tab 2 can be my graph window. I'll set that, graph, apply that. Tab 3 is going to be my admin window. And there we go, all set up. I'm going to go ahead and press OK. There's my buttons at the top. Now again, the only 2 windows that are going to open on startup is my, I want to remove the graph window from opening on startup, remove the admin window from opening on startup, because I just want the north window and the overview window open. I'm going to go ahead and save my project now. Let's go back to the client and see what we've done. So we'll update that. And so there's my monitoring system at the top with my 3 tabs. And right now, if I look at the under Windows up here, I only have 2 windows open, Navigation and Overview. If I go ahead and select the graph window, you see the background change, so it did actually swap out to a new window. And again, we only have 2 windows open. So we're now effectively doing swapping. So I can do the admin, see there's only 2 windows open again, and we can just go back and forth between all of these different windows. So a really easy way to do navigation with using a docked north window or a docked west window and a tab strip. Of course, if you wanted to make your own tabs or your own functions to open up windows, you can use any component for swapping or opening windows. So, for instance, a button is a good one for that. A button has the ability on a event handler, so basically when you click on the button, to do something with navigation. You have a whole tab devoted to navigation on these actions. So like being able to open or swap windows, you can just open them and center them. You can open them and close this window. You can swap windows. You can go forward and back. So I can go back to the window I was at previously or go forward. So you can have these little arrows there on your project. You can have the ability to close the current window or other windows using a button. And so with these actions, we can do all this navigation stuff directly. But the tab strip is already set up to do this for you. So you just have to basically say what windows you want to open up. So now that I have my overview window, of course, we can start putting stuff into the overview window, and we may want the overview window to open up some pop-up. So for that, I may have a button inside of here. And there's my button, and we go over here to the left, and I'll change the button name to Open Pop-Up. So to open a pop-up, I would need, of course, to change or to basically select what I'm going to do when somebody clicks on it. So I'm going to do event handlers. I go to my action performed, which encompasses a key press or mouse click. I can open up and center one of my windows. I'm going to open up and center a window called pop-up. I don't have one yet, but I'll just create it. So I'll open up and center a window called pop-up, press OK. We'll come over here and we'll create a new window. We'll make it really small. And we'll make it so this window is, we'll call the title of the window called pop-up. We'll make it so you can't resize it or you can't maximize it. So just simply a pop-up window. And then, of course, my open pop-up will open it up in the client. So we'll go ahead and save this project now. Let's go back to our client, go ahead and update. And there I have my open pop-up window. Again, I only have 2 windows open right now. When I open the pop-up, oh, it's giving us an error. Let's see what that error is. Oh, I didn't name the window here to pop-up. So let's go ahead and call it pop-up. And we'll save that once more. Update it. And we can say open pop-up, and again, it's going to open that pop-up. And it's just going to be a floating window that you can have on top of your main maximized window there. So it's really good for pop-ups. Now, one thing to keep in mind with pop-ups or with windows in general, if I go back and click on my main window, you see the pop-up, it looked like it went away. It looked like it may have closed. But in fact, didn't. If I go into my windows, I still have 3 windows open: navigation, overview, and pop-up. If I click on pop-up, it'll show back up to the front. That is because Windows have a layering ability. And right now, the layering is all set to the same number on all of my windows. So if I look at my pop-up window, come down here in my properties, and go down to the very bottom, I have a layer property. And the higher the number, the higher it's going to be in the client. So if I right now set this number to a 2, which is higher than 0, that means that it will always stay on top. If I go ahead and update my project, because here's my pop-up, and if I click back there, it's going to stay at the top. So that way I have to kind of keep it there and do whatever I need to do before, or close it before I can go back to my main window view. So in the pop-up window, of course, I can have a button inside of that. If I set that you cannot, on the pop-up window, if I set you cannot close it, and I remove that close button on the top right, then I can have a button on the window that can be set to close. I can even put a little icon if I wanted to along with the close. Maybe like at exit icon. And of course, the action of this button on the event handler is going to simply close the current window, the window that I'm in. So that way I can actually force it to use my button to close the window versus using the top right X button. So go ahead and save this project, come back, update our client, open pop-up, there we go, and it forces me to press to close before I can close it. So now we can do a lot more here. We can basically create up our navigation however we want, have these different windows, so that we have those 3 different types of windows: the docked window, the main maximizable window, and any pop-up that you may want. And so typically pop-ups, you want the borders and the title bars, and the main windows or the docked windows, you want those to kind of remove the title bar so it kind of looks like they run together, more like a web page. Now let's go one more step here, and let's show you how you pass parameters into windows. This is a very good technique. So let's create a new window here. Now again, I'll make it smaller. I'll make it so you can't close it, can't maximize it, can't resize it. It's a floating window. The title of the window will be my pass parameter window. I'll make the title bars, the border display poles exactly what they are. I'll make the layering set to a higher number so it always stays at the top. And what I want to do is have a button on my overview window. So we'll bring it down another button here. That's going to open up this pass parameter window and pass in a variable to the window, one or more variables. So let's say we have 4 tanks. And this first button here is tank 1. And I want to open up my pass parameter window and pass in a 1 to the window. So I'm going to rename the window up here, the pass parameter window, to pass parameter. Go back to my tank 1 button, right-click and go to the event handlers. On the action, we can say open up and center. We can open up and center that pop-up window, and we'll pass parameters. Over here to the right, we have the ability to pass parameters. So I can say pass a parameter here. We'll call it tank num is the parameter name, and the value is going to come here from the actual, it can come from a property on the window, or I can hard code it. So I'm going to hard code just a 1 there. There's my first button done. It's going to open up the pass parameter window, pass a value to a variable called tank num. The value is going to be 1. And I can make, 5 of these. So it's really easy to, you can right-click and copy and paste, or you can do Control-D to duplicate the component. We can do it like 5 times or 4 times. And then each one of these I can just go and set the event handler to change the pass parameter to 2, change it here to tank 2, go to tank 3, right-click, go to the event handler, change it to tank 3, and last one, tank 4. So there we go. Now I have all 4 of my buttons created, and I'm going to basically pass parameter into this window. Now in order to pass parameters into windows, we have the window itself on the root container has to have a property over here to the left that is the exact same name of the parameter we're passing. So I called it tank num with a capital N. So I don't have any property over here right now called tank num. So what I have to do is actually add my own property to the window. And that would be by right-clicking on the window and going to the customizer's dynamic properties. Here on dynamic properties, we can add our own custom variable. I can call it tank num, the exact same name of the parameter we're passing. And it has to be the same data type as well. I'm passing an integer, so I'll make the data type integer. It could be string, of course, any data type that you want. So mine would be tank num, the value would be integer. Press OK, and now here is showing up. There's my tank num. I'll make it in the designer set to -1. And on the window, of course, I can have a label here that can show us what tank we're looking at. So I can do a little expression that's going to concatenate the string tank num plus, I can bring in the tank num of the window. So when I pass in tank num, I can see that right here on my label. So I'll make my label much bigger. So there we go. Right now in the designer, the tank num is -1. But if I go ahead and save my project here, go back into my client, update my client, you'll see, of course, all those tank buttons show up. And I can press the tank 1 button. It's going to open up that pass parameter window and center it and pass the value of 1 into the tank num property. So now we can see tank num 1. And of course, I can come back and I can press 2. You'll see it open up the window and press and bring in the value of 2. I can do 3 and 4, and just simply have one window that will using indirection, can look at all the different tags, all the different points for each different tank, but we have one window for that. So it's really easy with navigation here to not only swap windows out to open them, we can pass parameters, and using all this combined, you can create a pretty powerful navigation system. Now I've done all this from scratch, and you could too, but a lot of people like to start from an example that we have given them. So if we go to our website, and we go to inductiveautomation.com, under the download section you'll see extras. Right here we have the ability to download this example project, and what we call this is a skeleton project. And it has a lot of this stuff already configured for you as a template that you can use. So I'm going to go ahead and download this example project. Let's go back to it. Download the example project. We'll save this file to our desktop. And that is a .proj file. So a .proj is a project file that we can go back into our Ignition Gateway webpage. And you can see on the home, of course, I have my training project. but I want to add the skeleton project. So I go to the configuration section, and under configuration projects, I have the ability to upload a project from a .proj backup. So I can select this, go and find my example project .proj, open it up, upload, and here my example project is now part of this system. And of course, I can go and edit it and attach it to my database, attach it to my SQL tags, and give it a different authentication profile. Now that it's here, I can launch my designer and to see all the stuff that is inside of that example project. So I'm going to launch this one more time. All right, this is my example project. I'll go ahead and open this up. And so here we have, if we look on the top left of my project browser, I can see all of the windows that are part of this example project. And right away, we can see 3 windows that have an icon to the right. And those are the windows that are going to open up on startup. So if you want to dissect this project and kind of see all the different screens and what's configured, we can then open up those 3 windows. So I have a header window. I'll open up my header window. That looks like a window that's docked north to me. If we look down the properties down here for that window, it sure is. It's docked north, and you can see all the properties that are selected for this window. There's also a left bar window, and that one looks like a window that is docked to the west. And we look down at the bottom, it sure is docked to the west, and we can see all of the information or properties associated with that window. So what we've done with these 2 windows is they look like they run together, and you can see there's no title bars, there's no borders, and it looks like it's kind of like a web page. Where you have your tab strip component over here to the left that will swap out different windows. We have the ability to show like who's logged in, how many alarms are currently active, and you can see we have tool tips on each one of these windows that kind of show you more information about the window, if it's docked, so you can kind of dissect the project better. We have the ability, we have in this project some various labels up here in the top right, allow you to lock the screen, allow you to switch a user on the fly, to log out. So a lot of this stuff has been set up for you automatically. Lastly, we have that main window, and that is my basically a window that is going to set to fill the rest of the space. So it's floating. It's set to start maximize. So that's how the window is be a floating main window. So let's go ahead and launch this client. Now that you've seen those 3 windows in the client, we should see how they run together. We'll go ahead and log in here. And there we go. There are my 3 windows. And you can see by making the tab strip with the same color as the color of the window, it does look like they all run together. So you can make a project look really nice, starting with the skeleton project. In fact, a lot of customers do. So we can go to the overview. We can see here's our 4 systems, and each of these have a little button for control, which will open up a window and pass in a parameter to that window. And it will show you how you can do interaction with SQL tags. It is a very good, again, starting point. You can see screen 3, which has nothing in there, but just there for showing how you can swap. I can go to alarm screen, and we can see all of this information. I don't have any alarm capability set up right now, but you'll be able to use this component if you want to see your alarms. So that's a good skeleton project for you guys to start from. I'd recommend it. That way you don't have to build it from scratch. You can just change the colors, put your logo on there, and of course change the screens up, and you're ready to go. Now there are a couple other properties on the windows that I want to just mention. And we talked all about the behavior of the windows. And of course we looked at the appearance, the titles, the borders, the title bar height, maybe the font of the title bar that you have up here. We have some layout stuff, the minimum size of the windows, some X and Y and width and height that you can set. And of course that layer. The one property I didn't show you is the cache policy. This is a very important policy, and I want to everybody to understand what it's doing. The cache policy has 3 values: auto, never, and always. If the cache policy is set to auto, then the window may or may not, depending on what information is inside the window, it may cache the data. So when you open up for the first time, it's going to open up in the same way that you have that you saved it in the designer. So let's take a pop-up window, for example, this pop-up window here. And let's say we put in an input, like a text box, and we put in, another text box here. We put in labels, or we had some tags maybe. We dragged in a tag as a LED display, for example. So here's a window that I've configured. So if I look at, of course, the cache policy right now is set to auto. So if I go and save my project and go back to the client, let's go ahead and update it. Let's move that one over to the right. Let's open on my pop-up. The first time that the window opens, then all of the components are going to display in the same state you left it in the designer. Now, if a component is bound to a tag like the LED display here, of course, that binding will take over and will show you the value that's coming from the tag or the database or whatever it may be. But things that are not bound to bindings, so any property that's not bound in any way, like these text box and this pop-up here, or this numeric text field, is going to show the same value that you saved in the designer. So if I saved the text field with a value of test, it'll show up with test. But because the cache policy is set to auto, if I type in test and type in 56.5, and I close the window, and then press the open pop-up window again, you'll see it's going to show us the same values. Those properties are not bound to anything. They're just straight static values. So it's going to show me what I kind of did last. And so the auto will detect, if you have input components or properties that can change by user. So if I come back in here and set the cache policy to always, so it'll always cache no matter what, or I can say never. And if I set this to never, that means every time the window opens, it's going to be in the same state that you left it in the designer. So let's show you this now. Let's go ahead and close the window, open it. Open up the pop-up now after a refresh, and I can type in test, and I can type in 56, 57, or whatever it may be. Press close. Go back and open up the window again. It's going to be in the same state that we had in the designer. Now, there's pros and cons of each of these, right? You can see once I press the open pop-up, you probably won't see it in the webinar, but in the top right is a little kind of indication that lets you know, that the window's opening. And for bigger windows, or if you have a pop-up window that has a lot of information inside of it, it may take some more time to open up that window. And that is why you want the window to be cached, because it took some time the first time, but if it's cached, the second time you open it up, it'll be extremely fast. And those are for things like displays, but things that you basically don't change. Or maybe you have an alarm history window where you select start date, end date, and you close the window and reopen it. You may want the start date, end date to be where you left it off. So that is why the caching policy is there. The never is basically saying, I want the window to always open up in the specific state, and the state that I left it in the designer, and that's what I would get here. And again, if I did set the cache policy to always, and I do have text boxes, and I want the text boxes to always show the same state that they were from the designer, then I could just simply bind the property, like the text property here, to an expression. That can be like an empty string. If I did that, press OK. So again, this window is now caching, so go ahead and save. The numeric text field doesn't have any binding there at all. So let's go back to the client, update it. Open up the pop-up. You can see if I select text, test, and put in 56, and close the window, open the pop-up window again, the 56 got cached. But because the text property was bound to something, that binding took place every time the window opens. So using those, you can use it at your leisure. You can figure out what cache policy you really want, but it does dictate there's a difference between the policies and how it interacts with that window in the runtime. But it is very important to note that Windows will open up in the same state that you have it saved. All right, so that basically concludes the seminar. So now we'll switch over to the Q&A section, and I'll get to all of your guys' questions here. And as we're going through the questions, please feel free to enter in more into the GoToWebinar console, so that way we can get to, if anybody has questions, we get to them all. I have a question here from Brian. Can I open up multiple instances of the same window? And that's a very good question, Brian. Let's go back to the designer here. And remember, I have this pass parameter window. That's my tank num. And we can also put in, we'll make that window closable. So it has my tank number, and I have the ability to pass in. Sometimes I want to compare tank 1 to tank 2, but I only want one window. So you can open up the window, open up multiple instances of the same window. And that is done through, if I go back to my buttons here on tank 1, and go back to the event handler, that is, you can see here I don't have any, it doesn't look like I can do it from this section. And that's because it's a built-in function as part of the scripting language. So this navigation here just simply built a little script for us. And on the script tab, we could, instead of using this open window, we can call the one that allows us to open up multiple instances. So let's go back to the user manual. And let's take a look under Appendix C, which is the scripting functions. And there is one in there under system.nav. These are all the different open window, close window, go back, go home, go forward. We have one called open window instance. So all I need to do is basically change it to open window instance. Let's go back to designer. Right here, open window instance, pass parameter. And I can do that in all of these different ones. So I'll just do it on the 2 here. Tank 1, tank 2, open window instance. We'll save this project. Let's go back to our client. We'll close these windows right now. We'll log back in. We'll go back to the very fresh state, 2 windows open. Press tank 1. There it is here. So I have basically 3 windows. Press tank 2. There it is. Multiple, so same instance or different instances of the same window though. So it's important that I design only one window, but now I can have 2 of them open at the same time. So very good question there, Brian. Another question from Brian, is transparent an available option for color? And it certainly is. And we do have questions on whether or not you can, on a window, have the window basically fill in or be maximized and make parts of it transparent. And so on a window, of course, you can set it so that it never shows the title bars and the borders. And then basically on any of the colors that you have the ability on the last one to change that number. That's the alpha or the opacity. You can change it to 0, and that would make it transparent. Now, of course, Windows, there's also this root container I made transparent, but I didn't make the window transparent. So in order to do this, we would have to use a simple little script that would simply change or make that transparent. And that would be a script that we do on the event of the window, basically when the window's open. So on internal frame activated or opened, we can make that transparent. So Brian, so what I would suggest you do is you can do that if you want to make the window transparent or parts of it transparent. Post that question to the forum, and we'll get the script there. A simple little script. We'll add it there for you. That way you can have anybody else there can take a look at it as well. So good question. Another question here is, can I overlap one docked window on top of another docked window? Say a north and west docked window. So, of course, the answer to that is yes, in a sense. I can, let me just look at, right now I just have one window open called north window. I could, of course, create another one, another window here, make it smaller. I can also dock that window north, and you would see it's going to basically stay at the top. And the other window is behind it right now, so they're both there, and you can see them. I can make my window, the other window, a little bit taller, in which case it would show up down there, but it's still dock north. And that could be maybe for like a sub, if you want like a sub, like a second navigation strip if you wanted, whatever it may be, you can have that be up there as well. And again, using the layer of the windows, you can affect which one's going to always show on the top. I can say my north window is going to change that layer to 1, in which case the other window will always stay behind it, and it can be a certain width and height. So there you can look at an example of this. We'll change the title bars and displays. Never. There's the 2 windows up there. And again, any other overview window or anything that's maximized won't be able to go over that window. Hopefully it answered that question. Another question here from Brian is there a priority of layering for a window docked north over a window docked east or west? Can it be changed? Yeah, I think we just got to that question there. There is a layering for docked windows. You can set that. It can be changed, and it will affect which one's going to be on top. Every window has its layer, and that directly affects what's going to happen or who's going to be on top of who in the client. So I hope I answered everybody's questions. There are no other questions, so I'll basically leave a few more minutes here for questions to come through. So if you have any, please enter those in. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for coming to today's session. Again, this is the 7th session of a 14-part series. So we're halfway through. We have 7 more courses to come. You can look at the events page of the website to see the next sessions that we have. So if we were to go there right now, under the events, you will see basically today was session 7, Windows Navigation. Next week, same time, Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We have session 8, which is going to focus on components. So we're going to look at the different components you could bring into Windows and what each of those components do for you. And then after that, we'll look at how more information about property binding. And we showed you a little bit here and also a little bit in SQL tags, but we'll go over more of the specifics of that. After session 9, we have session 10, which is the important components. And it focuses on specific components and showing you a lot more configuration on those. And then of course, you can see the next 11, 12, and 13, and 14. So if you guys want to sign up for those, make sure you contact your sales representative, and they will get you signed up. But again, we thank you for your time today. There are no other questions. Oh, one more just came in. Are the previous webinars available for download? And good question. Yes, they are. For integrators who are part of our integrator program, you can go to the integrator portal. You can log in, and you can, in the events schedule section, you can go and select a month, and you can see all the scheduled or all the recorded webinars, and you can then download them right there, along with the material that's there. So you just need to go in there. For end users, you need to contact your sales representative so they can give you a link to download it. Last question is, will anchoring and relative be covered in the next session of components? And most certainly, yes. Components for next one, we'll be focusing a lot on the layout, which will cover the anchored versus relative mode. Again, thank you everybody for joining today. That concludes today's session. I look forward to seeing you next week.